So let's start with question number 3, and as usual, first try and understand the paragraph really well, perhaps even slowly, and then evaluate the options. So let me start by the first sentence. A Japanese government panel announced that it recommends regulating only genetically modified organisms that have had foreign genes permanently introduced into their genomes and not those. So this is definitely becoming a long sentence for me. Perhaps it is better that I slow down and break it down into pieces. A Japanese government panel announced that it recommends regulating. So this is my first big keyword happening, because the first part of the sentence was easy. A government panel has recommended regulating. Okay, regulating what? Only genetically modified organisms that have had foreign genes permanently introduced into their genomes. Okay, so this should be regulated, but there was a keyword only. And if I read a little further, it says and not those. So and not. So something is being regulated and something is not being regulated. I had to understand this much. So let me slow down and go for it again. So these kind of genetically modified organisms, GMO for short, should be regulated. And what are these? They have foreign genes permanently introduced into their genomes. So let me give this a separate color. Why not? Some contrast is happening. And not those. So let me also revise a key reading idea. If you see a pronoun, ask what does it refer to. So not those, not what? Not those genetically modified organisms. Those refers to GMOs. So not GMOs whose endogenous genes have been edited. So I should notice the contrast. Foreign genes permanently introduced is regulated, and whose endogenous genes have been edited is not regulated. That is idea number 1. Secondly, I can guess that perhaps the meaning of endogenous is not having foreign genes. And this I'm making a basic deduction or inference from how these two are different. If this has foreign genes and this is regulated and this is not regulated, that means it must not have foreign genes. That means only the genes that are already present in the organism have been edited. So great. I understand the first part, the first sentence. I also see there is a contrast happening. Let me add some color to it to highlight that idea. Carrying on, the only stipulation is that researchers and businesses will have to register their modifications to plants or animals with the government. Easy sentence. I don't think this was too challenging. With the exception, once again there is an exception, because remember even earlier they were saying this should be regulated and this should not be regulated. So with the exception of microbes cultured in contained environment, so this is the exception to the rule. But so far this is all of this from the beginning to this point is the backstory or just the factual part of the paragraph. The opinion part, the thrust part is now going to happen. It says reaction to the decision are mixed. Which decision? The decision to regulate only certain kind of GMOs and not regulate another kind, or the decision to register but this exception in the registration. So reaction to this decision are mixed. That means they are positive as well as negative. While lauding the potential benefits of genome editing, while appreciating the benefits of genome editing, lauding means to appreciate, an editorial opposes across the board permission. So this is the central thrust of the paragraph, that there is an editorial which is opposing the decision, opposing the across the board permission. So all of this was the backstory to explain what the decision is, so that finally you can be told that the decision is being opposed, right? And what is the reason? Because now that idea will be elaborated as usual. Unforeseen risk in gene editing cannot be ruled out. That is the reason. And the final conclusion is all genetically modified material or products must go through the same safety and labeling process. All genetically modified material or product is in contrast to regulating only something and not regulating something else, or giving an exception for certain categories, right? So now I'm very clear about the paragraph. I have a great picture. Now let me take it. Now let me move towards the option and evaluate them with that picture in mind. So for now, let's say even after reading this much and doing this much work, you might not be able to articulate the summary by yourself, but that is wherein evaluating the option is very handy. First option said, a government panel in Japan says transgenic modification and genome editing are not the same. First of all, it might take you a minute or two to figure out that transgenic probably refers to that adding a foreign gene, and so it's kind of trying to confuse you between these two categories. But even if this is true, the government panel in Japan says transgenic modification and genome editing are not the same. So much more happened in the paragraph that transgenic one was being regulated and the other was not being regulated, and there was a reaction to it. So none of it has been captured in this option. So this is not going to work for me. It is almost, in fact, factually incorrect as well, because the government only said something is regulated and something is not regulated. It is not the same as saying that whether they are same or different at all. Option 2, creating categories within genetically modified products in terms of transgenic modification and genome editing. This was happening in the paragraph. I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm saying this part was happening in the paragraph, that categories were being created, and it is advancing science also. Even this was mentioned somewhere in the paragraph, but defies laws. This is where it becomes just factually incorrect. What law is being defied? The government panel itself has recommended this particular law, that this should be regulated and the other kind should not be regulated. No law is being violated in the paragraph, at least in the visible paragraph. So again, and please notice how this is how the difficulty is being created, because all of this is factually correct according to the paragraph. So if you're not very clear, absolutely clear, you will say, yeah, this is happening, this is the option, oh, the options are so close, but they are not. So you have to zoom in and pay attention, the same kind of attention to options, perhaps the same kind of concentration that you have in maths and LR puzzles. That is the kind of work that is required here, right? So this is not going to work for me. I'm ruling this out. Option 3, exempting from regulations the editing of endogenous genes is not desirable, as this procedure might be risk prone. Perfect. Exempting from regulations. Remember, this particular endogenous gene was not under regulation. Go back to the paragraph and you will see, and not those whose endogenous genes have been edited. So look at the option again. Exempting from regulations is not good and it is risk prone. That is what the paragraph said. It captures the whole story well. It captures the decision as well as the reaction to it. So this is definitely going to work for me. Option 4, accepting microbes cultured in contained environments from the regulations of genome editing is premature. Once again, accepting microbes cultured in contained environments from the regulations is partly true according to the paragraph, but is premature is not mentioned anywhere, and I already have a better choice, so I'll stick to that. So my final answer for this story is going to be option 3, and let me point out once again that this detailed discussion is for skill building and trying to drive home a lot of points. But if you are clear in your comprehension, this kind of a question with these kind of options, and I think they are very easy. I mean, I might be wrong in terms of judging your levels, but personally I found them very easy to solve, very quick, easy marks, especially in the context of the exam. So make sure that you're working on your basic reading skills because these could be